Good morning, America, and welcome to this morning's huddle, brought to you by Going on Offense. My name is Darrell Moon, and I'll be your host today. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you'll join in the conversation today. We have a wonderful guest panelist with us today to talk about lessons learned about resilience from being a pitcher. We are holding these huddles every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in an effort to be supportive to those who are struggling, to brainstorm strategies to help, to promote resources, and to engage collaboration. Now to introduce today's guest. It's my pleasure to introduce to you my friend Andy Neary, former professional baseball player, a 20-year veteran of the health insurance industry, and an Amazon best-selling author. I'm going to give Andy a few minutes to introduce himself and share a few comments about today's topic. But before I do, I want to invite those of you that would like to be a part of the conversation to either send in thoughts or questions through the questions box on your control panel, or if you'd like us to turn on your mic and you can actually ask Andy some questions or share your own thoughts, just simply raise your hand. We'll turn on your mic and you can be a part of the conversation. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. First, Darrell, thank you. I always enjoy our conversation, so I'm grateful you had me on today. Grateful for everybody else who's listening in right now. Yeah, my story, I don't have a rags to riches story. I had a pretty normal childhood, but what Darrell talked about is I did spend a few years playing in professional baseball as a pitcher. And I was a very undersized pitcher. And so I'm excited for this conversation today because when you are undersized, you didn't throw all that hard, you had to have a lot of resilience. And so in sports teaches a lot of lessons. And so what I do today is I use a lot of those lessons I learned in baseball, resilience being one of the big ones, to help people overcome whatever challenges they might be facing today. So excited for this conversation, Darrell.
Talk a little bit about, baseball is the longest sports season out there. You got a lot of games. And as a pitcher, you got to have a short-term memory. Talk a little bit about being resilient and not letting that last pitch or yesterday's loss affect your game.
That's a great place to start. So one thing you have to have as a pitcher is a short-term memory. And I could have just given up a 400-foot home run the pitch before, but literally in the next minute, I get a new ball back from the catcher and I've got to face that next batter. And so you have to have that short-term memory. It's the old phrase, don't let the highs be too high, don't let the lows be too low. At the same point, if I just struck out the number 4 hitter, I can't sit there and celebrate and sit in that victory because I've got the next batter coming up to the plate who is equally as dangerous, right? And so being a pitcher really taught me what it meant to stay humble. And again, not let the highs be too high or the lows be too low. I'm going to use another sports example, Darrell, is, 2 running backs many people remember from the past are Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith. And one thing I loved about those 2 athletes is when they scored a touchdown, what did they do? They handed the ball to the ref. Like they'd been there before, right? Now you look at NFL and these guys score touchdowns and it's a 3-act play of acting and all these things that are going on.
Celebration.
My point is this: in life right now, resilience to me is not just getting through the tough times. I think resilience is also somebody who is able to keep it even keel. So in those high moments, those victories, yes, they're celebrating those victories, but they're not letting the celebration overshadow the job at hand. And when it goes this way, which let's face it, right now in this pandemic, a lot of people are on that low. They're not letting the emotions get to them and prevent them from moving forward. So to me, that's a big component right now. Don't let the lows be too low, but also don't let the highs be too high either.
Well, and fear is freezing. I mean, fear is just paralyzing. And obviously there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of people out of work. There's fear about how long this is going to take, the impact that it's having. It does paralyze you.
Absolutely.
And so maybe talk a little bit more about maybe how you've used those lessons of resilience and try to keep somewhat level right now in your own career and in your work and in your daily life.
I'm going to actually use a really cool analogy, Darrell, that has nothing to do with baseball, but it's something Amy and I both do that has really been ironically helpful for this moment. So anybody listening in, if you want to learn a quick hack to get some quick energy, start your morning, I urge you to jump in an ice cold shower. Now, you laugh and say, I would never do that. But here is the theory behind it, Darrell, and this is the mindset piece, is what do most people do when you jump in a shower? And you instantly freeze, don't you?
Uh-huh.
But what we have done over time using this technique, one, to give us to help our energy, two, to help our immune system, but three, if you can learn to sit in a cold shower and get to that point where you're just like, even though it's freezing cold, guess what happens when most people in the pandemic is hitting? Guess what most people are doing?
Yeah.
You're going, I'm okay. I got it. I'm good. And my point is, focus on resilience here. Again, if you can control your emotions, work on controlling your mindset and feeding your mindset with positivity right now,
Yep. Yep.
it is going to elevate your resiliency coming out of this. Because again, when most people are watching the news, they're hearing the statistics and they're freezing and getting and letting the emotions overcome them. If you can do everything you can to surround yourself with good news, good vibes, good people, it is going to help you come out of this in a much better position.
Yep. I like what you said about the idea of just keeping your emotions somewhat in check. That's not to say that you're going to be flat all the time, but not letting the lows get too low, the highs get too high. And I know that in my case, engaging the relaxation response has been an incredible, and you can talk about it in lots of different terms, meditation, mindfulness. But when you're feeling overwhelmed and you can take that breath and you can relax and try to let your body normalize, because if your mind's emotionally uptight, your whole body becomes uptight. And if you can get that mind to slow down and just engage that relaxation response, it's amazing how much energy that puts back into the body when the
Absolutely.
body's back in a normal state of rest, and you can move forward and not be paralyzed.
Yep. And I also think too, what I hope a lot of people are learning, given this environment, because a lot of people are quote unquote failing right now, whether they've lost a job, money situation is tight. Resilience to me, Darrell, as well, is learning to be okay with failure. I think a lot of people fear failure so much. It goes back to what you said earlier. It paralyzes them, right? They don't take appropriate actions they probably should because they fear that failure. And right now, let's face it, again, failure was thrusted on people. They didn't ask for this. But to be okay that it's happened, you failed. But if you can use it to learn from what has happened so that you can come out of it better on the backside, it's just going to set you up for much more success later on.
Right.
You're not going to fear taking action.
Well, there's been a lot of examples of companies that have just simply pivoted. They've said, look, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I've got to change. And that takes creativity. That takes a lot of brainstorming and thoughts and the best mindset that you've got. And if you're focused on the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the depression, you're just not going to be able to pivot.
Well, and I'm going to use, going back to some pitching analogies, Darrell. As a starting pitcher most of my career, the strategy that I went after a batter in the first inning couldn't be the same strategy I went after that same batter in the fifth inning. Because if I became consistent in my approach, it became obvious. And I became much more predictable later on in the game after a batter had seen me 2, 3, 4 times, right? So as a pitcher, you have to constantly pivot your strategy because you have to change it up every time you face this batter again. And the same is going on, I think, with business right now is pivoting. And here's the cool thing, Darrell. Right now, I think we have nothing to lose. I think if you're in a business, you're an individual, whoever you are, I literally feel like it's a clean slate for everybody right now. And so if you want to pursue a career that you've been thinking about, you want to pivot your company in a certain direction, you have nothing to lose right now. And I think if you're okay with knowing if you try it and it doesn't work, and that's okay, it's going to give you the confidence to take that action. The best thing you can do right now is take action. Don't let this moment, this event paralyze you. just start taking messy, imperfect action.
Well, and Andy, you're a great example of that. And if I've followed you for a number of years, we've been friends. I've seen the different things. You've got your hands in a lot of different areas. You're a speaker, you're an author, you sell insurance, you're a healthcare consultant. You've got a lot of different things. Talk a little bit about the pivoting you've done over your career and how
Yeah,
that's been.
absolutely. So to your point, Darrell, I've been in the health insurance industry for almost 20 years now. About 5 years ago, I realized I really like speaking. A lot of people run away from microphones, right? I feel blessed that when I run towards it, I don't know if it's an attention thing or what, but I love speaking. So I really made speaking a part of my career to the point today that I earn just like you earn money speaking. And then as the consulting grew over the years, what actually has come out of it now most recently is a coaching practice, because it started with other advisors in the insurance industry reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me with a keynote? Can you help me put a presentation together? To now I'm helping advisors and non-insurance industry businesses grow their message, first by clarifying their message, but also by making sure they have the right daily habits and rituals in place to make that happen. And so to your point, growing and creating new opportunities over time for yourself, I think, is a great thing. You do it with your business, Darrell, is giving yourself multiple opportunities to win today and constantly pivoting into new opportunities. To me, it's a great way to go grow moving forward.
Well, and I've loved how you've used your baseball experience in a lot of those, the whole idea of coaching and leadership coaching, and your speaking, you use that a lot.
Yeah, and I want to share this story if I can, because
Sure.
this definitely speaks to resiliency in my mind. So one thing that sports teaches you very well is how to be okay getting booed. So I shared earlier that I was an undersized pitcher. I'm 5'9". I'm literally the definition of average, Darrell. If you look up average male height in the United States, it's 5'9". And I can remember when I was pitching in Helena, Montana with the Helena Brewers. We were in Missoula, Montana, taking on the Missoula Osprey. And it was our first trip there. We had known the crowd in Missoula is pretty rowdy. It's where the University of Montana is. The summer school's out, the students come to the game, have a little too much fun, and they get all over the opposing team. And so it was the first game of the series, and I was a relief pitcher in pro baseball. I was called in early in the game because our starting pitcher was having a very rough game. And so I come in, I get to the mound, I grab the ball from the manager, Dan Norman, and I remember I started warming up. And as I started warming up, the crowd starts chanting. And little by little, as I'm warming up, the chanting's getting louder to the point I can actually hear what they're chanting, which was, how can you pitch when you're 5'6"? 5'9", not 5'6". But the point is, as a pitcher, here's the probably the best lesson being a pitcher taught me, Darrell, about resiliency. When you're pitching on the road, you are literally the center of attention, and that entire stadium wants you to lose. You have to shut all that noise out, laser in on the catcher's glove, and do your job. Why I share that right now is I think a lot of people out there are preventing themselves from growing their business the way they want to, or starting that new business or starting that new career they want, because they're afraid of what others will say. They're afraid of that booing, that noise that might come with it. And you have to have that resiliency of tuning all of that out and just doing what you know you want to do. If you can get to that point, life gets a lot easier.
Yep. No, that's a fantastic story. It's a great example. I'm going to invite again anyone that's on any of our attendees who are listening in to, if you've got a question for Andy, or if you'd like to make a comment, please do that. Let's talk a little bit about the companies that you work with, and what are you seeing amongst your clients and how they're responding to this? Have there been many that have been largely affected? What are some of your clients doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Darrell. I would say on the healthcare side, so with the health insurance practice, I've been fortunate. I feel blessed that the clients I work with have probably at worst had to furlough people and not have to have massive layoffs, which is great. But what I have seen, the cool thing I've seen from organizations, the ones I work with, is how quickly they have pivoted to just making sure their employees are taken care of. In fact, I have one company, a colleague who runs one company that has been doing well financially. They had a very good run. And so what they did in this time was they actually um, added $1,000 a month to everybody's pay to take care of any unforeseen expenses those employees might have. Now, I get it, not everybody can do that. Not everybody's in a situation to do that, but just that little boost, I think is so cool to see. But I like I said, I think all in all, watching organizations really hone in on the care, both mentally and physically, of their people has been such a cool thing to see. Now, again, unfortunately, some have had to lay people off, which is something they don't want to do. Now, on the coaching side, Darrell, my clients that I work with, I think I was, truth be told, a little fearful about where does coaching sit in all this? Because everybody's saying get rid of unnecessary expenses, right? What I have learned coming through this is that coaching for most business leaders right now is more important than it's ever been, because they need
Really?
they need that second set of eyes and ears, that guidance, and most importantly, that accountability. Because I think here's the biggest thing I've seen, especially with this move to the work from home model that most people are in, is it's exposing a lot of the weaknesses that were always there. It's kind of like people blame social media for the mental health issues now. Well, no. We've always had those problems. Social media just really exposed it. The same as with working from home. If a leader, for example, has some weaknesses or didn't quite have the structure in his or her day to lead the team, it's really getting exposed right now. And so that's where I think from the coaching side, a lot of business professionals and business leaders are looking for that accountability to say, hey, I need to be at my best to bring my best to my team.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I think that's a very important part of running a company. And there is a greater focus right now on the part of leaders to build a culture that's healthy and that inspires well-being and that it takes care of their employees. And I've seen the same thing. People are more focused now than ever on culture. And, having run, as you know, a company that manages population mental health, there's nothing more important that you can do than to be proactive and to build a culture that enhances health and well-being versus drive stress. Because a lot of cultures within companies are some of the biggest stresses that people face, whether it's their manager or a coworker or just the philosophies of the company. And so the more that employers are mindful of the mindful state of their employees and what their culture of their company is doing for that, all the better. And I think this has helped companies focus on that and begin to become more aware of what are we doing as a company to not just talk about business, but talk about one of our primary customers, our own employees. I mean, when you think about what employers spend on healthcare, it's often the second largest cost of doing business. Well, almost 90% of everything we spend on healthcare can be traced back to just the way people live and the stresses and anxieties that go along with life. And it's like, are we burning this fire that's just causing a lot of these problems that people are getting sick over, by the way we run our companies? Or are we truly creating a culture that's a purpose-driven organization that's about enhancing health and well-being and productivity and mindfulness and optimizing people's performance and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you bring up two really good points, Darrell. From an organizational standpoint, I'll come at it from the coaching side of what I do, and then the health insurance side. On the health insurance side, I think you and I are both very actively involved in trying to help employers reduce the size of and the cost of claims, right? And because it's medical and pharmacy claims that drive health plan expenses. I think it was really easy for, say, the past 5 years when you brought those ideas to an organization for them to push it off, because economy's good, money's good,
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds like it would work, but we're just not interested. I
Yep.
think right now that has quickly thrusted to the forefront where these organizations are going, uh-oh, we should have been doing that 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Second thing, though, on the coaching side is I heard this actually from a friend of ours here in Fort Collins, and it blew me away. The organization he works for, even in the work from home scenario, Darrell, the team leader was requiring the people to clock in and get their 50 hours in.
Oh, really?
And I was like, you're missing the point. That's not what this is about. So I think on the coaching side or the business side of when people are working from home, the best thing you can do right now is teach your people how to get more done in less time, so that they can have that time to hang out with their kids, hang out with their husband or wife, because that's just the way life is right now.
And be okay with that.
And be okay that you may not be as productive as you were in the office, because that's just the environment we're in right now.
Right. So Andy, one of our attendees sent in a question for you. The question is, I'll assume that once or twice while you were a pitcher, the crowd did get to you. What did you do to overcome that?
I would say that's a great, actually, I love that this individual asked that. So number one, I will give two examples. What did I do? Number one was external. I think this is why a catcher in the game of baseball is so important. And it's probably why, if you've got any baseball fans on this listening in, Darrell, if you look at the managers in Major League Baseball, an overwhelming majority, a large number of them are former catchers. Why
really?
is that? Yes. Why? Because they are the ones who have to kind of be the captain of the ship. So one thing that was so important to me as a pitcher when I was getting rattled, whether it was I've given up several runs or the crowd's on top of me, it's the catcher calling timeout, coming out, and just calming me down. So one, I call that having the accountability partner, right?
Yeah.
Of coming out and saying, hey, let's take a break. Let's calm down. But on the flip side, internally, the best thing I could do because there were a few moments where the crowd's getting to you. There's things you do here. You can't tune 100% of it out. Or in baseball, momentum's a huge thing, right? You've given up a run. All of a sudden you gave up this dink single that's like, how did that fall in? And then that momentum just starts to spiral out of control. You literally have to have that ability when there are 5,000, 10,000 people screaming. You have to have that ability to walk to the back of the mound, close your eyes, and just take that breath.
Yep.
Because I go back to what you and I talked about earlier. If you let yourself go, you're done. Yep. You have to have that ability in the moment of that panic to be as calm as you can be.
So Andy, one of our guests, our attendees, Alan, has raised his hand. I turned his mic on. Alan, share your thoughts.
Well, good morning.
Hey, Alan.
Andy, this is very inspirational to listen to you this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you for being here.
I've been fascinated by this concept of resilience for many years. It appears to me that those who we honor the most in history, those that we deem to be heroes, have all been through hard times and shown resilience. And that's why there are heroes and our role models today, which I find interesting. And I guess at the end of our lives, we'll be able to look back and see who we have become will pretty much be based on how we dealt with hard times and how resilient we were. And I guess as I've been listening to you, I would just say I think the best definition of resilience is just not quitting.
Absolutely.
When things get hard, just not accepting not accepting a temporary failure, and just not quitting. But my hat's off to you for your baseball career. Dane Orge is a relative of mine.
And now, is that the Toronto Blue Jay, Dane Orge? Or the Kansas
City
Royal?
It's the Kansas City Royals and the St. Louis Cardinals.
He had a
Dave
huge
Moore.
hit, he had a huge hit in the 85 World Series, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, he's got 2 World Series rings, but he's shared with me that probably the hardest thing in sports is for a batter to hit a pitch through proper hand-eye coordination, in a professional baseball game. So you're part of that, and I just take my hat off to you for your career in baseball, and thank you for your comments this morning.
Oh, and thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to expound on what Alan said there, Darrell. I think there's a couple of great points in there to be made. In baseball, they talk about hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do in any sport because you literally have less than a second to think, decide, and swing, right? We talked about failure and being okay with failure. People forget the greatest hitters in baseball failed 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And I go to also being a leader. I heard this story from somebody, a friend of mine, that I thought was so valuable, and it's baseball. A lot of people remember the name Ted Williams, one of the greatest baseball players of all time. People forget that Ted Williams was also a manager for the Washington Senators, I believe, and he was actually a terrible manager because one of the challenges he's had as a manager is he couldn't coach or lead what he did. Because if you look at some of the greatest athletes in baseball or in sports, Darrell, they can't coach because their philosophy is, well, just do it the way I do it. And there's no empathy. They can't resonate with people. So as a leader, it's so important you resonate. In fact, the story I remember about Ted Williams is he was standing behind the batting cage before a game, and one of his batters was having a hard time hitting. They were throwing curveballs in batting practice, or a slider, and the batter was having a hard time hitting the slider. And Ted Williams' advice was, well, just look for the dot on the baseball. You'll know it's a slider. And what Ted Williams didn't realize was that he was literally one of the only batters in history that could actually see the dot on a ball when it was a slider. Like his visualization was that good.
Wow.
Nobody else could do it. So he couldn't coach how to hit a slider. It was so, but point is, as a leader, you have to resonate and have that empathy with your team.
Yeah.
And Alan talked about resiliency, just overcoming challenges. The last thing I wanted to say there is I think one of the problems we have today as a society is social media, again, I said, has exposed a lot of people, but it's also made people so not resilient. Because if you want to grow today as an individual or as a business, Darrell, you have to put yourself out there. People have to get to know who you are. But today with social media, all it takes is one bad comment.
To shut people down.
And people are shut down.
Yep.
So Alan is so right. You look at some of the greatest heroes in history, it's their ability to overcome one challenge after another and say, you know what, I have no cares in the world and I'm failing. We are just going to keep plowing forward.
Andy, that's amazing. I know you got to run, so we're going to cut this today. Is there any final comment that you want to make in the next maybe 20 or 30 seconds before I know you need to run about this topic?
This may not be so tied to resilience, Darrell, but I do want to say this. And again, I can't take credit for this. It's something I heard someone talk about that just resonated with me. I said this earlier. This is a clean slate right now. Yeah, I think one thing that's happened with this pandemic is the playing field has been leveled completely. So if you're sitting on this call and you're like, again, I'm not sure I like what I do, or I'm thinking about starting this business and I'm not sure if I should, this is your chance to do whatever you want to do. Take action on your dreams. This is your chance to rewrite your future. Because the worst thing you want to do, and this goes where I heard somebody say this, is the worst thing you want to do is if you go visit a nursing home today, people who are at the end of their life, the one thing you will hear about the most, Darrell, is regret.
Mm-hmm.
Things they should have done in their life, things they wish they would have done in their life. This is your chance right now. The world has changed forever. This is your chance to rewrite your future right now.
Love it. Andy, I'm going to let you sign off because I know you need to run.
Thanks,
and I'm going to just do some concluding remarks. Thank you so much and have a great day.
You too, Darrell. Appreciate this. Thank you.
Okay, take care. In conclusion, I'd like to just announce that Our guest for next Monday will be Dr. Paul Larson, Director of Global Health Education for UPMC. The conversation will be about making goals during times of uncertainty. We will be sending out a post-huddle survey. Please take a few minutes to share your thoughts. And if you've got any suggestions or ideas for upcoming or future huddles, please send those in. We would love to hear if anyone has any suggestions on guest panelists for future huddles. You can contact us through the contact us form on the goingonoffense.com website. We want to thank the organizations that have gotten behind this. Please check them out on that website. There's a number of resources that have been made available to companies, to individuals, a lot of free services, discounted services, ideas, suggestions. Please take advantage of those. To finalize things today, I'd like to share a video of how one neighbor used decorating his home to cheer up the neighbors and how others followed. So I'm going to sign off now, say goodbye. Hope you'll join us for a future huddle. We hold them every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And again, remind you that we'll be posting the recording of this on the website.